Welcome to the PM Pour, the podcast for property managers. It's a place to pour a cup of coffee, pour yourself a glass of wine, or simply pour your heart out. The PM Pour is a community designed specifically for those in property management. It's a safe space to communicate, network, and learn from one another. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you back to the PM Pour. And on this week's episode, we have Andrea Heading with us. Andrea is the CEO of the Real Estate Institute of South Australia. She is passionate about building and fostering strong business relationships and believes in authentic engagement. Her business background is diverse and covers travel, automotive, digital tech startups, oh my gosh, and government sectors as well. She loves a challenge and is particularly fond of working with category disruptors and shaking up more established organisations. Andrea sits on the board of the GoGo Foundation, an organisation that is on a mission to support women who have faced complex life barriers into safe and sustainable employment. Andrea is a strong supporter of building up a younger talent pool of the next generation of change makers and has a number of individuals that she provides mentoring support to. So thank you so much for joining us today, Andrea. Welcome to the PM Pour.
Yeah, thank you, Kylie. This is great. That was quite an introduction, knowing that it keeps going. So, but that's really good. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Well, thank you. A little bit about our podcast is that I really want people to know within our industry that we have so many career opportunities and so forth. And I have interviewed already a couple of different CEOs and so forth. And I just love the fact that, you know, there are so many opportunities for property management individuals as well as women. So I would love to find out a little bit more about you and how you became the CEO of REISA, because you have got such a diverse background. So what happened? How did you get here? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
And probably from my perspective, it's now more of an age thing in terms of being around for a while. So and working across a whole lot of careers. But my sort of DNA really is in marketing communications. So this was a long time ago that I studied a Bachelor of Business majoring in marketing. And then that took me on sort of a trajectory into working back with creative advertising agencies in Adelaide. So it was, I was a very young, at the time called a media buyer. So I used to buy television ads on, the inspired sort of little breaks in television or radio commercials and ads in magazines. And so that actually started off this really sort of intense interest, I suppose, on my part in terms of consumer behaviour, why people buy, and about sort of serving messages up to people at the right time in the right place, at the right moment with the right product. So it was always sort of like the psychology of why do people buy and how do they buy. And then from there, my role just evolved, and I worked at a number of different sort of major firms here in South Australia. But one of my really favourite accounts was the South Australian Tourism Commission, and they were a client of mine, but I enjoyed working on them so much. I was approached to go and work with them, and so I was with SA Tourism for like 5 or 6 years, and that was selling the state of South Australia, which was a really beautiful, destination to sell. It still is a fantastic. Yeah. So lucky me. So it was definitely, and
a terrible job to have.
I know. And working on things like Tasting Australia and Tour Down Under. But it was really interesting because even though it's a government sort of organisation, it's quite commercial in its outlook in terms of, the more people you bring to South Australia, the better it is, say, for the economy. So it was, what were the triggers behind all of that? And then I jumped from there and went and worked at a place called Discovery Parks, which is a big caravan park. Yep. And that was a really interesting business as well, because as much as it's sort of like all about caravan parks and in beautiful locations across the whole state of Australia, it's one massive booking engine as well. So from a digital perspective, it was sort of, there's a big audience. It's almost like a big broadcast television station, and it's all of these people that are, that, travel and either, there's the nomads, and they're no longer, or they were no longer called grey nomads, because you can be nomadic and travel, and you don't need to be defined by your hair color or your
No.
age or anything.
I think there's a group
And
called Not the Grey Nomads now as well. So
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. But the beauty of that job too was, I was working in sort of like the brand tone, and what sort of, how that, as an organization, you presented outwardly, but it was getting to know the business really from the ground up. So internally, I worked in housekeeping, guest reservations, cooking, barbecues in the camp kitchen. So I think the whole idea is that when you go and work for a business, you jump right in and get to know all different aspects of the business, rather than being sort of hygienically sealed off into sort of one particular area, and that's all you do. But at Discovery Parts, I met the very wonderful Kane Cook, who's the current chair of
yes.
REISA. So he and I worked together there for a number of years, and there was we worked well together. We worked really well together at Discovery Parks, and so there was a healthy admiration, I think, between the two of us in terms of the way that he approached his business life and world, and what I do as well. And then I got approached to go and work for a digital fitness company called Sweat. And Sweat was at the time owned by two big influencers, which was Toby Pierce and Kayla Lange. So, and she was known for, well, she had an app, which was, or an ebook it started off, and then an app, and it was the Bikini Body Challenge, but they changed that name, which is a good thing. And so it was, but it was all a digital subscription business. You bought you subscribed for, for 12 months or however long, and there was a number of different workouts that were surfaced to you. But Kayla at the time had, 27 million followers on Facebook, 15 million followers on Instagram, a whole pool of sort of trainers that were part of the sweat world. And so I was campaign manager in terms of creating content for all of the different fitness
amazing.
influencers,
Yeah.
and then working back with the likes of Meta in terms of buying ad space, again, sort of back in that spot of, serving up creative at the right time, at the right place. That was a really, oh golly, different company to work for. I learned so much, considering that both my employers at the time was sort of under the age of 30. But that was really good for me. And I was the oldest woman in the business, let me tell you, and I didn't wear activewear every day. So that was sort of like, but super, super interesting in terms of adopting technology early, particularly with sort of, and how to keep people engaged, particularly through, the app or the workout. But there was a big community that was behind it as well. And then I went, and from there, COVID happened, as it did to lots of businesses. And in fact, the business pivoted and was, membership grew overnight, like tripled and quadrupled. And because the majority of members were based in the States, and UK, Canada, everywhere else, and then also Australia, but Australia was sort of low down the list. But another opportunity came up at the end of COVID. So basically, we kept the lights on during COVID, and created a huge amount of at-home content for people to work out with. And then I went to work for a not-for-profit company called Maxima, which specialised in disability employment, Aboriginal recruitment, also group training. So it's a really big not-for-profit company in organisation in South Australia, and it was across a whole lot of different business units there. So that was sort of building a marketing communications team from the ground up. And then my world and Kane's recollided. So that's a long way of getting to sort of like the CEO role here at REISA. And I think the beauty of say, when Kane and I were talking, Kane was interim CEO at the time. REISA had gone through a little bit of wavered maybe a little bit from its original path in terms of the purpose of what a peak body is. So we had a couple of meetings, And then I had the opportunity to present myself, not only, to the REISA board at the time, but also to the staff here at REISA, to some members, and also to some partners, slash sponsors. So it was actually quite a good way of them sussing me out and me sussing them out to see if I was a good fit.
The right fit.
Given the fact that I didn't have the pedigree of real estate behind me, but it was more about how to commercialize a business in a whole lot of different ways. So it was really looking under the bonnet that REISA was at the time, and fine tuning some parts, looking at sort of what we could streamline, maybe the importance of relevance back to an industry, particularly post-COVID, because I know that sort of, that was a boom time for real estate, but then there was such intense scrutiny on housing supply,
legislation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That diminished point of return in terms of, owning a house, when's a good time to sell, when's a good time to buy. So it was sort of like, really, and I think the business itself was, even though it's steeped in history, it's a way of sort of like, how do we modernize and make the organisation future fit?
Yep.
Yep.
And that's an ongoing thing.
Is it what? And I mean, we're lucky to have you as one of our trainers, Kylie. But I think that was the big thing about sometimes peak bodies are probably very good looking at themselves internally, but not understanding the external environment, the external pressures that's out there as well. So certainly from our perspective, it was, and from REISA's perspective, it was, how to re-engage back with the industry, but also making sure that we've got the right people either within the organisation or that we work with that help sort of like spread our message further.
And I think that's one thing that's happening really well is and I think you and I have spoken about this before, and just full disclosure, I'm one of the trainers at REISA, so for the property management area. And what I think is fantastic is that there's so many trainers now with REISA as well. You've got, I think there's 2 of us for property management, there's sales, commercial, trust, it's such a and you offer so many different training sessions as well.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that that was the thing about having subject matter experts train in the areas that they have great expertise in, and but also making sure that it's really people that are on the front line. So, and I think sometimes also where the big need to expand what our training portfolio and what professional development looked like was to make sure that what we trained was reflective of actually what was happening out in the real world as well. So, and we understand it to be like, it's such a heavily regulated industry. So certainly you can teach sort of the rules and, the obligations that you need to act under, and with Residential Tenancies Act, etc. But also it's applying it in real life, and what does that look like in day to day? And I think that's the big thing. So
and having people come together and talking about how they manage situations, it just helps them learn from one another as well, from real life experiences like what you've said. So
that's right.
So it's a great thing. Before we move on to, the nitty gritty of REISA and so forth, I just wanted to talk a little bit about your mentoring. You mentioned that you do some mentoring, and I want to hear a little bit more about that. I love that, and I wanted to share that with everyone because I did not know that about you.
Oh,
and
no, fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's sort of it's actually something that I feel is my way to give back, because I was mentored by 3 really incredible women over my sort of career. From a really early age in advertising, there was this really amazing lady who still is a wonderful friend of mine. But she sort of put me up and out, and was really good in terms of supporting sort of different career decisions I made. She was my boss for a period of time, but then has followed my journey all the way through. So herself and probably two other women were quite ahead of their time, I think, when we're talking about sort of 1990s and what the role of women in the workplace was compared to, say, what it's like now. And so from my perspective, it was about, I got so much from them that that's sort of almost repaying in their honor, how they set me up for success. So, and I think because I'm a natural connector in terms of, I've got, not as in, like as in, but I've got a good amount of contacts, and I've worked with a whole lot of different businesses and across a whole lot of different and worked with a whole lot of different age groups, that it's that relatability back with a certain younger group, and certainly males and females. So many, or there's probably about 4 or 5 that I work back with now. It's look, if they're feeling like they're stuck career wise, are they really stuck, or is it, I've got this, I love this expression of that, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so it's more about, how do you, are you happy? Is something worrying you in your day to day? Does it need you to sort of up and turn the lights out and start again? Or is there something that can be fixed in the here and now? So there's sort of, that comes up in conversations. Other is sort of, how to make sure that your role is still stimulating, and that you're, when you're working in a business, are you working on all of the business or just your area, which is sort of going back to before about me sort of like wanting to get really underneath the bonnet of different businesses. And some, like a couple of sort of young men that I work back with are more at that stage of how do they get noticed, and they feel like they've been somewhere for a period of time. It's actually really interesting that they're even thinking this, but and what does a career move look like for them? So yeah, so
That's fascinating.
I know it's terrific. So it's more about how to help themselves set themselves up for success, I suppose. So
yeah, and I think that's vital. Everybody's got to have somebody to turn to at some point, and that point is different for everyone. And to be able to make sure that you can set yourself up for success, you really need to have some form of guidance from someone. So,
and I think also, Kylie, it was the bit before when I was talking about when I worked in media and like know your audience, because one individual I was helping, and they were applying for a role with the state library, and when I read their cover letter and things like that for it, and I know that AI has changed the way that people approach job applications, things like that even, but I said, why don't you write your cover letter like a story, given the fact that you're going into like a literary world. And so so it's more about, and I said, because you can all sound really good, but tailor yourself to the role if it's the role that you want as well. So it's also how to approach, what does your preparation for an interview and things like that look like. And I remember once I went for a role a while ago, and this was sort of in the food service industry, and one of the people on the interview panel said, "Oh, how did you prepare for your role?" And I said, "Well, the first thing I did was Google Maps your business, because I didn't know where you were." And it's even down to the most basics of how to get there. What did I need in terms of timing? And they liked, and I said, I know it sounds sort of something small, but they liked the fact that it was sort of like the preparation that you do, not just in terms of knowing the business, but how you're going to get there and make sure you arrive unflustered, and all of
where
that
to park.
Yeah, exactly. Everything. So yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Andrea. We have got so much more to talk about, because we haven't even started talking about REISA itself yet. Like I said earlier, I just wanted to really introduce yourself, Andrea Heading, the the CEO of REISA, And thankfully, as Andrew's going to stay with us, and we are going to do a second episode, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the Real Estate Institute and what that actually looks like. So thanks so much for joining us this week, Andrea, and we will see you again next week.
Beautiful. Thanks, Kylie.
I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe so you're notified of new episodes as they land. If you'd like to speak to me further, please contact me at kylielange.com.